Hi, I'm your Scream Queen Poppy and welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about a film called The Ruins. It came out in 2008, it's 93 minutes long and it is rated an 18. We have some quite intense and mature themes coming up, so just be cautious. Some trigger warnings for this film include injury detail, violence and threats. So again, just be cautious. A quick summary for this film. A leisurely Mexican holiday takes a turn for the worse when a group of friends and a fellow tourist embark on a remote archaeological dig deep in the jungle. This was written by Scott B. Smith and it was directed by Carter Smith as well as Scott B. Smith. It's based on a 2006 novel by the same name, and fun fact, Ben Stiller was an executive producer on this film. Some notable cast mentions include Jaina Malone, who was also in Danny Darko from 2001, as well as The Hunger Games from 2013. We have Shawn Ashmore from Frozen 2010, as well as The Boys 2019, and Joe Anderson, who was in The Crazies from 2010. The box office for this film is $22.9 million, so it didn't do too badly at all. Let's talk about the plot. The film opens with a woman crouched in a dark room, and she screams as she's dragged away by some unseen forces. So we follow two young American couples. We have Jeff and Amy, and we have Eric and Stacy. They're on vacation in Mexico when they meet a German tourist called Matthias. He's looking for his brother Heinrich, and the last place he can track his location to is an archaeological dig at a Mayan temple, like a set of ruins. So they chat for a while and Matthias agrees that they can come with him to this archaeological dig the next day in search of his brother. That night they all get drunk on the beach together. After a while, Jeff decides he wants to go to bed and he tries to drag Amy with him, but Amy's really drunk and Amy doesn't want to go to bed yet. So he agrees to leave her with the group and he goes off to bed. Amy then pulls Matthias up to dance. And it's all nice and friendly at first. After a few minutes, Stacy's called over because Amy's getting not quite hot and heavy, but she's getting too flirty for her own good. So next morning we have Eric and Stacy who are waking up and getting ready, and they're joking about how drunk Amy was last night. And they've made a bet on whether she would try and kiss anyone when she was drunk, and because she tried to come on to Matthias, Eric won the bet. So they're making jokes about the idea of Amy being unfaithful. Meanwhile, with Jeff and Amy, Jeff's having a shower while Amy's really hungover. She's throwing up in the toilet and Jeff is having to do everything he can to convince her to still join them on this trip. But she does. She decides she'll come with them. They meet up with Matthias, who introduces them to his Greek friend Dimitri, who's going to come on this trip with them. They've left a map with some of Dimitri's friends, so they'll know where they are. They go to find a taxi, but the taxi driver seems really reluctant to take them to this location. He doesn't necessarily specify why, he just says, no, don't go here, but they give him enough money and he takes them as close as he's willing to get to this jungle where this temple is. They hike through the jungle for a while and eventually come across where the path's meant to be, but they can't see a path. And the reason they can't see a path is because it's been covered with leaves and shrubbery. And they wonder why someone covered the path. Maybe there's something wrong. And in the distance they see two children. They try shouting out to the children, trying to be friendly, but one of the children just runs away, while the other just stands and kind of observes them from afar. They go down the path and eventually come upon the ruins, this old Mayan temple. But as they get there, so do a small group of Mayan villagers. They're armed with knives, crossbows and arrows, and a gun. Matthias tries to explain that he's looking for his brother, trying to show them a photo on his phone of Heinrich. But as they're doing that, Amy is taking photos of the villagers, and as she does, she steps back and stands on this patch of vines. When she steps on the vines, the villagers become really, really angry. But the problem is, this group only speaks English and Spanish and German and Greek, but the Mayans don't speak any of those languages, so there is a communication barrier. They cannot communicate with each other. Dimitri thinks it's Amy taking the photos that's the problem, so he takes her camera, in doing so steps into the vines, and starts to approach the villagers. The villagers seem to kind of give him a warning, but he doesn't understand, so he keeps coming towards them and they shoot him with a bow and arrow. And then they shoot him through the head with the gun. The rest of the group panics. They flee up the temple, up the steps of the temple to get to the very top. At the top, they find an abandoned kind of little campsite, as well as this well in the middle of the roof. A big well with a shaft going down into the temple. It's also worth noting that there are vines covering this temple. They're on everything. They start to hear a phone ringing from down in the well. And Matthias says this is the same ringtone as his phone. He has a cellular satellite phone and it has the same ringtone, so that must be his brother Heinrich's phone. As it seems to be a well, there's a rope in the middle of the well leading down, so they tie Matthias up to this rope and start to lower him down into the well in search of this phone and possibly his brother. But the rope doesn't hold. It snaps and drops Matthias a really long way down. You hear his body thud. In a panic, they send Stacey down. The rest of the rope looks alright, so they tie her onto it and they send her down. But they unreel it all the way, and there's still quite a jump that she's got to make to get down to Matthias. But when she gets down there, she can see he can't move his legs. He can't move at all. So she unties herself and jumps down, but in the process, breaks the lantern, which shatters, and a piece of the glass embeds into her leg. So now we have Matthias and Stacey down at the bottom of the hole, where Matthias confirms he can't move his legs, so she relays that back up. Jeff is studying to be a doctor, so he kind of knows this isn't a good sign. And Stacey also said it stinks, so when he asks what does it stink of, she says it smells like. So Jeff obviously knows this isn't a good sign, so they know they have to get him up. But in a fit of rage at the top, Amy climbs back down the stairs. She wants to confront the Mayans. Jeff follows her down and she's trying to bargain with them, trying to reason with them, but obviously they're not understanding what she's saying. So in her anger, she picks up a handful of the vines and she throws them. The vines hit one of the village boys, a young boy. You see him clearly begging for his life to the other villagers, but they shoot him. They realise that there's something wrong with the vines. The villagers seem to be afraid of the vines, and they realise that the villagers are not going to let them leave, so they climb back up to the top. At this point, really, they've already probably touched the vines. On the top, they decide that they need to send someone down to get Matthias to bring him back up. So they volunteer the girls because they're going to weigh less and the boys can bring them down easier. They make a cot out of one of the tents. They cut strips of fabric and make almost like a gurney for him that they lower the girls down on. So at the bottom we now have Matthias, Amy and Stacey, and the girls have to somehow get him onto this cot. But the cot is elevated, so they realise they're going to have to pick Matthias up and they need to do it in a way that's not going to further break him, but they also know they just need to get him up and need to try and get him some type of help. So one of them takes the top half of him and the other takes his hips, but even this, when they pick him up, causes his back to bow and they potentially made the damage worse. But they get him onto the cot and the three get back up onto the top. Back on the top, Jeff assesses Matthias's injuries and it's not looking good. He's pretty sure he's paralysed and has no use of the lower half of his body. So they spend the first night together on the roof in one of the tents and they bundle Matthias up outside as warm as they can. The next morning, Stacey awakes, she can feel something. She pulls the cover down and in the wound on her leg, a tendril of a vine has gotten in there and is worming its way into her leg. Eric manages to pull the vine out of her, but as he's doing this, outside they hear Matthias scream. As they go outside, they realise the vines have completely wrapped around Matthias's legs. And overnight, they've eaten his legs down to the bone. I mean, Eric was barely able to get this vine out of Stacey. They try and take the vines off Matthias's legs and they can barely make a dent. And shortly after this has happened, they hear the phone ringing again. So they need to find the source of this phone because they couldn't the first time. Once again, the girls have volunteered to go back down the well. They go down together, get to the bottom. They have small sources of light, so they hold hands as they go down the tunnel. And they come across a room, and the room is completely covered in vines. It's overgrown, but they find the body of a young archaeologist, and she appears to be one of Heinrich's friends. Next to her is a broken phone, and when they realise the phone is broken, they wonder where the ringing was coming from. And it's then that they find out that the ringing is coming from the vines. The vines have these pretty pink-purple flowers blooming from them, and they are emitting the sound of a ringing phone. As Amy touches one of the flowers, the vines start to attack them as they make a run for it and they barely manage to get back up out of the well in one piece. 2 pieces. Back on the top, Jeff confides in the group that the only way he thinks he can save Matthias from infection and from dying is by amputating his legs. This comes with a lot of lashback from the group, but Jeff tries to explain that he's pretty sure he's paralysed, so he shouldn't be able to feel anything, and this is truly the only way to try and stop infection from taking him over. Even Matthias calls out hearing this and asks Jeff to cut his legs off. So they get to it. Jeff and Eric do it together. Eric holds him down while Jeff cuts off his first leg. He has a metal pan searing on fire that he then uses once he's managed to get the leg off to cauterise the wound. He then repeats this process with Matthias's other leg until it's completed, but this whole time Matthias has been screaming, thrashing, acting like he could feel everything. Jeff throws the rotted limbs off to the side and you see the vines come for them. They start pulling his legs away. That night, Amy's obviously distraught, so she confides in Eric, who comforts her. He just holds her as she cries outside. But back in the tent, it's almost like Stacy's hallucinating. She awakes and she swears she can hear them doing the nasty outside. So she comes out in a fit of rage and accuses the two of having an affair. Jeff hears the commotion and comes over, and the four are arguing. Stacy's accusing Eric of sleeping with Amy. While they're both obviously claiming this didn't happen, Stacy's not feeling well. And then Stacy brings up that Amy did in fact try to come on to Matthias, which obviously doesn't go down well. While the four are arguing in the background, the vines see their chance and they come for Matthias. They wrap around his whole body, even going as far as to go into his mouth and down his throat, suffocating him. Jeff snaps and remembers Matthias as he comes up in the argument, goes to try and rescue him, but at this point it's too late. The vines have killed Matthias and there's nothing he can do. And the vines even try and take his body. The next morning, now on day 3 of this adventure, Eric calls Jeff and Amy to come into the tent. Stacy's lying there and Eric asks Stacy to show them what she had shown him. So she does, and they can see little worm-like things wriggling around under Stacy's skin. The vines are still inside her and they need to get them out. So they agree they're going to make a couple of incisions to remove the vines that they can see. Jeff first makes an incision to her leg and manages to pull the vine out there, but it's in pretty deep. And the next one's on her back near her spine. So he makes another incision and he pulls that one out, and she is barely holding it together during this. It's horrible. After they get these two out, they say that they're done, but she says, no, I can still feel them. We have to keep going. They say, no, we can't keep cutting you. So she sits down and she says, they're in my head. She tries to take the knife and they stop her, but as they do, they can see one wriggling around under the skin in her forehead, and they know that her fears are true. The next morning, now on day 4, Stacy awakes before the rest of the group. She ventures outside by herself while the others are still sleeping, and she finds the knife in one of their backpacks. Jeff wakes up and he hears almost like moaning coming from outside, so he goes outside to check, and he finds Stacy stood there in her underwear, covered in blood and covered in wounds. She's been cutting herself to pull more and more vines out of herself, and she looks like a badly carved Christmas turkey, to be honest. He touches her, but it spooks her, and she thrusts the knife at him and slices down his palm. She apologises, but quickly goes back to what she was doing, kind of hacking into her own leg. Eric also tries to intervene and tries to calm her down, but she flings herself around and ends up stabbing Eric in the chest. Amy's trying to calm Stacy down, kind of brings her down to the floor, and meanwhile Jeff is holding Eric, who is dying, in his arms. Eric and Stacy join hands as Eric slips away. Overcome with guilt and grief, Stacy turns up to Amy and asks her to kill her. She asks her and begs her, kill her. But the moment becomes even more horrific when the vines start joining in. The vines begin mimicking Stacy's voice and parroting back in a really horrible way, kill me, making her sound whiny, and it just keeps going and keeps going. Amy asks Jeff not to do it, but Jeff does kill Stacy to put her out of her misery. It's meant to be a mercy killing. The vines pull their bodies away too. Jeff begins trying to formulate a plan for them to escape. He smears blood all over Amy's face and body and gives her the car keys for Heinrich's Jeep. He then picks her up and she hangs limp. He carries her down the steps of the temple to the mine villages below, and he lays her body down on the ground. He starts talking to and kind of almost ranting at the villagers about their plights and what they've gone through, and then he kind of berates them and provokes them into following him as he walks away from her body. He kind of causes a distraction for her. He shouts her name and she gets up and she runs. But as he does this, they shoot him with the bow and arrow multiple times. She's running through the jungle for her life. They are chasing her, trying to get her too, and Jeff is lying there looking up at the leader of the village as the leader shoots him. Amy does manage to get to the Jeep just as they're on her tail, and she manages to escape. After Amy's escape, we kind of skip a short time in the future, and Dimitri's Greek friends who had the map have come in search of their friend and why he's not turned up at the airport for their flight home. They are walking towards the temple, shouting Matthias and Heinrich's names. And that's the end of this film. So let's discuss some of the themes of this film. It's described as a horror/adventure, and I mean, I can definitely see that. They definitely go on an adventure, but it's not a pleasant one. I think it's also a bit of a creature feature with the vines. They are their own creature, to be honest with you. It's also sort of giving body horror, and I always say this, but not in terms of things necessarily bursting out of people. This time is things kind of bursting into people. It's giving sci-fi horror, and even on a level like folklore horror, because obviously to the villagers this is truthful folklore to them, yet you shouldn't go near this place. The script of this film was really good. It was really good at storytelling. It explained everything without you needing to ask many questions. And there was an active use of characters who couldn't understand each other, which I thought was a really interesting plot point because they physically couldn't communicate with each other well enough. They couldn't explain why the vines were bad. They couldn't explain that they were just good people. They weren't. It was just a whole lack of communication, which led to really horrible events. It gives you a sense of urgency and anxiety that kind of carries through most of the film. Especially as it kind of goes on, it becomes heavier and darker, and more so and more so. Plot-wise, I really love this plot. It's a really unique take and a niche take on sci-fi creature horror. You don't see a lot of plant-based horrors, which I will get into in a bit, but the fact it's not just a big bad monster with teeth coming at you or a scary person, you know, some mystical serial killer, it's literally plants. And it's kind of a scary concept because the idea that even just your shoes touching these vines is enough to taint your whole body so you can just rot or be eaten by these plants, it is horrific. And I think you'd know that it was going to be a slow way to go as well. Like once they figure out the vines are what's bad, what are they meant to do? They can't leave, they're forced to stay. I also love the concept that these vines, they're not new, they've been here a long time. And it brings up the question, how many years have they been doing this? How many people have been fed to this plant? Acting wise, to begin with, there's nothing special, there's nothing extra, but I think that's kind of the point. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. The characters are meant to be really average, run-of-the-mill people, and this situation is something that could have happened to anyone. But as the film goes on, the characters develop, and I want to give a big shout out to Stacey because the way her character develops and kind of devolves in this film is just marvellous. She kind of has this rapid descent into madness, and you feel like you're going mad with her. It's heartbreaking to watch, but it is also captivating. Gore-wise, it really sneaks up on you in this film. Starting with Dimitri's death, which don't get me wrong is horrifying, but is minimal compared to the events that are about to unfold. Because then you have Stacey's leg injury and then Matthias's injury, which is obviously massive back and leg injuries, the amputations, the cutting. The brutal vulgarity of horror in this film is just done so masterfully. It doesn't shy away from the gore at all, and it's a surprising kind of gore in this film, and it's honestly just marvellous. The cinematography in this film was really good. One thing I really enjoyed was the use of natural lighting. Sometimes horror can be scarier when the big bad things are happening during the day. So when you have all these really horrific scenes happening in the middle of the day where it's bright and sunny, it's such a contrast to what is happening in of itself. And then at night or down in the actual temple, it's dark and it's dingy, it's creepy inside the ruins. Everything's just as it should be. I really have no complaints. I love the use of mimicry in this horror. I think mimicry is such a scary concept to include in horror. That's where I think it really takes an interesting turn. That scene where she figures out it's not the phone, it's the plants. That is the twist we were waiting for. The realisation was harrowing, and they kind of taunt Stacey the most during this film. Again and again, they listen, they learn, they lure. It's literally like a predator and its prey. Is the plot believable? No, obviously not. There's no possessed plants anywhere that are going to eat you. The closest thing we have, I guess, is Venus flytraps, and they're probably not going to come after you. But it's still a really unsettling watch, and the plot feels real enough while you're watching it. Some pros and cons of this film. Fantastic use of horror and gore in this film. It was so niche in what it did, and I really loved that. Had a really gripping plot and some really great turns and twists, as I've already said. It wasn't really predictable, and overall it was just a little gem of a find of a film. Con-wise, my main con would be I didn't even think they used the mimicry to its full extent. Stacey got the majority of the taunting, apart from them hearing the phone ringing. They mainly zeroed in on Stacey, and I think it would have been really interesting if they tried to break the minds of the others as well. I also wish that Jeff maybe could have figured out a plan where he could have lived as well. He truly martyred himself for Amy. But overall, I don't really have any complaints. So some similar films for me. The amount of gore and just the gore itself in this film, the violence, really remind me of the Evil Dead remake. And obviously, if we're going to talk about things like amputations and things like that, Saw's also going to come into play quite heavily here. The use of plants in this film for horror really reminded me of The Happening, which is another film I really love. It was just done in a different way. Instead of them emitting these chemicals, they were physically doing the harm themselves. And obviously I'm going to mention Little Shop of Horrors because carnivorous, deadly talking plants. Duh. Let's talk about the ratings. I was quite shocked when I saw the ratings for this film. So on Rotten Tomatoes, they gave it a 5 out of 10, and the audience only gave it a 3 out of 10. I don't necessarily agree with that. I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was actually really well done, and I think it's such a unique little film, and I think people need to give it a proper chance because I found this film harrowingly frightening watching it for the first time. So my rating for this film is going to be a 7 out of 10 because I think that's much fairer. So thank you guys so much again for joining me. I can't wait to hear what you thought about this one. If you have seen this film, please leave me a comment and tell me what you think, whether you agree or disagree. And if you haven't seen this film, go and watch this film. This film is truly one of my favourite little films I found recently. I've watched it again so many times. It's just a good watch. If you like this video, please give this video a like, leave me a comment, and subscribe if you want to see more because I have plenty more good stuff to come and I can't wait to share it with you. Thanks so much again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.